Hi, I'm Kelly, the Scarf Witch, and this is the Liminal Tapestry, a space where I follow glimmers of remembered threads, weaving through story, symbol, and soul. Threads that rise from the liminal and move through both the mysterious eternal and the practical now. I don't always know where they're leading, but I follow the movement as a quiet invitation to wander and to weave.
Today is a little different. This was the first of what I hope to be many conversations, an opportunity to follow the threads, not just within myself, but with others. There wasn't an agenda for this one. We simply started talking, and much like sitting around a campfire, one story led into another. We wandered through spirituality, ancestor work, mythology, synchronicity, identity, transformation, and the many ways we make meaning in our lives. Going forward, some conversations may unfold just like this, while others may begin with a single thread and trace it back as deeply as we can. Either way, my intention remains the same. Not to arrive at any sort of certainty, but to create a space where we can stay in relationship with the question. So for this first conversation, I'm joined by Jinx, the Imperfect Witch. I left this conversation largely intact because the wandering is part of the point. Some threads only reveal themselves when we give them enough room to unfold. So, settle in, get comfortable, and join us around this virtual campfire.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. I should probably do some introductions, so I might record a separate introduction. I'm so glad we're not doing this live.
I know. My husband wanted to listen to, and I was like, no, it's not like
that. Yeah. No. I mean, maybe if we do it a couple of times, it'll make sense to do that. But yeah, so I had recorded this a while ago. Like I started doing podcast episodes, and then I mentioned it a couple times, and then I did that one video on TikTok where I was talking about meditating while walking around, and it prompted you to say, "Hey, I'm ready to be on your podcast." And before I even say that, I should say Jinx and I it's appropriate to call you Jinx, right? Like that's how you yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
She is the Imperfect Witch on TikTok, has a website. We'll do all the things. I'll put all of your things in the descriptions wherever we put this.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Why do this sort of thing if it's not for networking too?
It's good to get both. It's good to get both. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Something started speaking of which, something just started playing in the background. My other podcast episode started playing in the background. I have to edit the shit out of this. But yeah,
or leave it, like I love the naturalness of it, the conversation. That's what really was exciting to me. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to do this with Kelly, because me and you, we can go there. So I'm excited.
Right. Exactly. If I could get through like introducing who the hell you are and how we know each other. So we met on TikTok basically. It was so funny how it all came to be too, because honestly, I was Scarf Witch on TikTok the whole time I was doing videos, became mutuals with you somewhere along the way when, you didn't have witchy anything on anything. Right. I didn't even know we were responding to each other on like millennial shit. Like
yeah.
In fact, one time, like I was very, very brand new on TikTok. You were one of my first mutuals, and you would message. I've never told you this story. You would message me, say hi, and I thought I clicked a wrong button or something, and I just deleted the chat. I didn't know how it worked, and I was like, "Is this a real person?
Who is this stranger person?"
I've always felt embarrassed about that. Anyway, so why don't you tell the people about yourself and whatever you want to say, and then we can get into it.
Yeah, so I'm Jinx, and I have a book and a new metaphysical online shop called Imperfect Witch that came about mostly because of the book. And the book came about because I had been in the witchy closet. I had not shared online. I had not felt safe talking about my spiritual journey. And you were one of the first real, like, witch creators I followed and resonated with. Everything else was kind of like spell tutorials, and which is great. You know, as a new witch, you come in, you're like, I don't know. But I was deep in a reflective space, in a healing space, in a space of grieving. So your videos resonated the most with me because you were talking about not the spell work itself, not casting, not manifesting, but the emotions behind it. And so that's, you know, why I stayed and I kept watching and interacting, and I loved your videos. And it gave me some confidence in, like, watching you share so vulnerably gave me a lot of confidence to come out and start talking about that. And that's when I think it must have been at least a year into when I was following you, that I mentioned I had a book. And
Yeah.
Kelly was literally, she was like, she wrote a book, get it done, get it published, I want to read it. And I was like, oh my god, someone cares. And I did. I went through the whole process of actually getting that book from this manuscript state to it is out, it is printed, people have read it and bought it. It is a whole thing. And that, just distributing it, is how Imperfect Witch, the metaphysical shop, the coven, the featured artist products, basically my whole job right now was born.
Yeah.
Wild.
It was, and it was so wild to me because I came up on, like, not even realizing you were into witchy stuff at all. And, like, to be honest, like, I toe the line so much in the occult spaces, like, of witchy or new age, right? Like, because a lot of the you froze. Oh, you're still there. You might have been deep in thought. You know, because I speak about, like, the philosophy of it more than the practice of it, which is, like you said, like, more the WitchTok thing. So when I found out you were witchy, and then when you said you wrote a book, I was like, I remember going, a whole ass book? You actually wrote a book? Like, not only were you in the closet, but you wrote a book. I was like, we have to see this. I have it on my shelf right here. I know we're not on video right now, but oh my gosh, it's like, even like there was a certain part in here where, I know I told you this before, but there's a certain point in here where you're talking about, like, ancestor work, right? And especially when it comes to, like, the baneful magic and things like that. And I was like, oh well, no wonder. I guess I could look it up in your index. You have it, a wonderful index in here of where I just can't talk and do them at the same time, but where you described it, and I was like, oh well, no wonder I'm not personally into baneful magic, because I am not ready for that sort of thing, because I haven't done the ancestor work. So it was really cool. I'm really into herbs and stuff too. You're doing a herb and oil class soon.
I'm really excited about it. I think, and going back to the ancestor work thing, I really. Do you mind if we jump in there? And
please,
talk about that?
please. Let's just follow the threads.
Yeah, I've heard the feedback I got most from the book has been that people really felt like encouragement to follow the ancestor thread, including my husband. And this is going to touch a little bit on race, I think, if that's okay. Because
on the table.
Okay. Because I'm in a mixed relationship. My husband is considered white, right? He's Norwegian descent and Norwegian, British, and I think there's some Irish in there. And I'm Spanish and indigenous, and very, very much New Mexican. Like, the history, the lineage on both sides of my family go way, 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 way back in New Mexico, before the borders changed, before it was New Mexico. That's how far back the history goes. from my family line. So I'm very much from, here.
Mm.
So ancestry has always been part of the culture for me. You always, talked about your ancestors. You had to always remember them. The grandparents always told you stories of people you've never seen even pictures of, right? Much less growing up.
Yeah.
You were supposed to know that. You're supposed to know about, there's like Catholicism mixed with a lot of just culturally the herbs, a lot of the medicine, growing food. That was very much already part of my culture. So when I started doing the craft or practice, now I was an atheist for a long time, right? I went full science, evolution, psychology. Like I was, when I got to a point where Catholicism didn't speak to me, which was like around 12. It was pretty early on. I did some exploration. I was, very lucky that my parents were not, although they were Catholic or they believed that, they were not pushy about it. So they let me explore. I read about other religions. I read about Buddhism and I read about Hinduism. I learned those things, but I learned it in the context of a teenage brain. So,
Right.
it's not. It didn't resonate.
Right. Your frontal lobe was still forming, right? Like
exactly. At that point, they're pretty like abstract concepts. And so then eventually in college, late teens, college, and through most of my adult life, atheism. I was very science based. I was very I was still into herbalism. I started my herbalism journey before I started witchcraft, but not too spiritual. And my parents were very worried about my lack of spirituality. My father always told me, you need a roof over your head, food to eat, love, place to shit, and spiritual growth. So I went down.
In that order.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So they were getting worried about me, and my dad kept saying, "I don't care what you believe, but you need to believe in something." And my mom would be like trying to comfort me, and it would get to a point where she would just say, "I don't know what to say, but you have to have faith. You have to have faith." And I couldn't do it. Like I could not bring myself to have that faith. I don't know why, it just didn't resonate. And maybe it's because I was at the time still very atheism versus Catholicism, Christianity, right? And it just
binary.
didn't. Yeah, I was very much in that binary, and it just didn't resonate, so I couldn't do it. And when I became pregnant, the intuition went through the roof, through the roof. And I didn't know what to do with that. It was just kind of an awkward stage for me of being really intuitive and not sure where to put it. And then having baby, postpartum, and mom dying, all kind of within the span of 2 years. Was like, I need something. I desperately needed something. And I found myself wanting to be connected to my ancestors. That's where I found comfort, the dead. And that's what essentially opened the door to me practicing. So ancestry was my first step into witchcraft.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, to meeting my mom's spirit, to meeting and feeling other people's spirits. And weirdly enough, is also when my father's biological family and I found each other, months after she died, not very long, a few months after my mom passed away. And then I learned the whole history and story behind my father's biological family, which had been shrouded in mystery my whole life, right? Because my father was a foster child. So, and he thought he was found in a dumpster his whole life. And it had turned out that this woman had had him at 17 or 18, and we don't know why, but he was taken at birth and placed into several families. And she had looked for him. The half sisters who found me had told me the story that they thought their mother was crazy because everyone said she was crazy.
Right.
She had been looking for a baby, and everyone said that baby didn't exist. They are younger, so they were born after from a different father, and they just thought that their mom was crazy looking for a baby that she never had.
That's so wild. I remember you talking about this before. This is wild.
Yeah, and so it was a very abusive situation for her, for my biological grandmother, and his biological sisters or half sisters ended up losing her when they were 15 to suicide. And I just, such a sad story, such a sad story. But to learn about her, and I really felt like it instinctually. I felt like her story, that was what I was meant to hold, was her story, to give the truth to my father, that he was wanted, that he was loved. However he accepted that was his business, but I held that story. And I get chills every time I think about it. That was something that was like, wow, okay, so ancestry work really does come to play here. And it's always been a big part of my practice. Yeah. So my husband, on the other hand, has been really wary about it because he's white, right? And there is a big, hesitancy about roots, going back and knowing that there's a potential where you find out your family line has participated in horrible cruelty in this country. I think is that's a fair hesitancy, I think. Especially if that's not how you feel as an individual, right? But to say, like, how do I carry that? So that has been something he's starting with as far back as possible, and slowly making his way forward in the line.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. And for mine, I think I was, and if we're gonna talk about it too, like a portion of whiteness, right, is this, and I went into this in one of my things recently, is the assimilation, right? And which is this sort of erasure. And so I was completely blind to the idea of it. I heard ancestor work, right? But I was much more into, my groundedness was grounded into the earth and what was here and physical in front of me, not necessarily it didn't occur to me to connect it to a familial line. And that's what really interested me a lot about the way that you would talk about it and things like that, even especially when I would bring up things like past lives, because that's sort of like a pseudo thread. Not to, I'm still very much into past lives, parallel lives, all that stuff, but I'll call it a pseudo thread for now, like towards some sort of history, some sort of before me story, right? And a couple of times when I brought that up, just your reaction to it, and you've never been like, in a corrective mode about it, but you bring up these sort of comments that get my mind going on it. Which sparked my curiosity on, okay, well, wait a minute, then perhaps there's a groundedness to the history, perhaps the stories that I'm telling about, because I've always had this idea of this, that I've had past lives or something in deep ancestry of, like, there's something in me of a very conquering type energy, and I don't want to conquer,
Right.
I've I don't know how much I want to go into it, but like I could sense the harm, right?
Right.
Yet at the same time too, that's why the most recent thing I wrote, when I wrote a note to my ancestors, quote unquote, I put it up on my blog too, where it was just like, yeah, there's some of that, and there's some of people just trying to do, like, trying to get by, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know for a fact that my mom's dad changed his family changed, they were Polish and they changed their last name,
Right.
when they came to the States, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
generations. So there's this aspect of assimilation, and then at some point it sort of becomes this projection of like othering because you're just trying to
Mm-hmm.
stay safe.
Right.
I don't know enough about my specific line to know all of the things that really, but I wonder how much of these energies that come in. So I very much understand what you're talking about with your husband of like, oof. And I've heard people say that before too. I've seen it in comments of like, oh, I don't work with my ancestors, they're assholes. But you know,
Right.
there's a certain aspect as well. I think, you know, they say like when you've gone beyond the veil, that you don't have the attachments that you do to like the fear and the whatever, right? So I've got to think then if my ancestors are there in spirit, there's some part of them that recognizes what they did while they were here, and let me be that legacy that then breaks the pattern, right?
Right. And even want to guide the next generation. And
Mm,
I see that a lot now too. I'm seeing a lot of anti-ancestor work videos. I'm like, okay, you know, like to each his own. If you feel that strongly about it, but for me, you know, okay, so I have Catholicism in the background,
mm,
very strong,
mm-hmm,
and honestly, I also have ancestors that were good. I think probably were not good people, right?
right.
That I don't know that well. Um, but what I do find is the ancestors that I am hearing, it was very easy for me because the first one was my mother. That was so easy, right? It was so obvious it was her.
Mm,
Um, and then later, as I open up to it, you can hear the more fainter energies. And so
mm,
the next one was my cousin. In summation, to not go so deep into it, I found the ancestors that are okay working with me
mm,
have obviously want healing in the line, and they
mm,
don't care, like they don't carry the same strict moral code in life as they do like now. So
right.
the other ancestors who maybe do, I don't hear them, they don't come to me, you know. I don't call
Yeah,
upon them.
right.
It's not,
Right.
so to me I'm like, it seems pretty easy. And but it might be specifically me. I get, when I do readings, I get the card necromancy a lot.
Mm, mm-hmm,
So it might just be that I am called to do that work. My
mm.
husband doesn't get that as often at all. Actually, I don't think he's ever gotten it.
Both this whole like necromancy comes up for you a lot, and then when you had mentioned that you really felt like you were meant to hold something, I forget where you said that, but it reminded me so much of that oil. Is it Amet oil that you ended up making?
The Amit,
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
where it was just like, wow, it like there's these threads that you hold that like end up, and you still don't necessarily know where that's going, right? You just
Right.
followed it. But I feel like that had something, there was a death thread there too. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
and that's bringing up another one. So yeah, I can't, you know, it's so strange, the Amit thing. I'm not heavy into deity work because, again, coming from the atheist background, like to me, I'm like, well, why would I want to replace the god with all these other gods and all the rules, right? Like that,
Right.
it didn't feel super called. So Hecate was the first one. That did feel okay. That felt like guidance. That felt like being held.
Mm.
And then not much after. And then Amit came, and I was like, Amit? What?
Like, who are
What?
you? Why are you here?
Why? Why? Yeah, like what? I don't have any like Egyptian anything. This is where that past life stuff might, be coming in. I don't know. And I'm like, that's the strangest thing. And also, Amit isn't even like a traditionally venerated deity. Amit is the justice piece of the afterlife in the Egyptian lore. She's the eater of the unjust souls. If you don't get to go to the afterlife because you were an unjust or evil person, then she just devours you.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, that's scary as fuck. What the
I remember if you make it, you're like, well, that was rough. I am smudged. Like you did a like play on words because your makeup was all. You looked like you went through it.
Yeah, it was intense. She has intense energy, man, and her hunger is there. I can feel it. I was talking to Bree. It's so weird. I was talking to another witch who does justice spells a lot, right? And so I was like, this is meant for you. I don't know if it's meant for me, but it's meant for you. So I sent her some. I have used it now. I thought I was going to be really scared. After the first time I used it, I actually got a lot of peace from it, and I was like, oh, this has to do with my protective nature. This has to do with my justice nature. It was a missing child alert that I got that kind of it called me to finally go ahead and try it. And so I was like, okay, so this is about the scales, and I'm a Libra. I have the scales in my symbol. And then so strange. I still very rarely use it, right? Because I always have this feeling of like, who am I? Who am I? Like, I have no reason to be judging, weighing, whatever. But I am a judgy 6. But but I don't mean to be judgy on that deep of a level.
Right.
But I ended up looking at it, and I looked at Amit, and then I have a Egyptian deck, and I brought out Anubis's card, and I was like, okay, ultimately you weigh the scales. I'm just handing it to you. That's all I'm doing. I'm bringing it to you, and you guys do what you need to do. And then it's been a couple of, like, at least a month or two. I'm bad with time, time is my enemy, but...
Yeah, that bastard.
He's always thwarting me. But I get this like jolt to, and I never do this, to do a trend on TikTok. They're like, oh, silly trend, search goddess and see what comes up. And I was like, oh, Hecate is going to come up. You know what I mean? Like, because
right. Yeah.
Non-Shay comes up. I'm like, who the hell is Non-Shay? I've never heard this name. I don't know. Okay, it's worth a Google. She is the Mesopotamian. She's the oldest Mesopotamian goddess that there is actual documentation that she's the goddess of social justice.
What?
Yes, and associated with scales, and judges leaders and judges people for exploiting others. She's the goddess of the orphans, the widows, the downtrodden. I was like,
all of them, the exploitation, the orphans, so many of
the threads that, yes, I talk about all the time. This is work I've been doing my whole life before I was spiritual. And you get the chill. You're just like, okay, go with it. Go with it. Exactly. I don't know what else to say.
That's those things where I'm like, wow, I know that as much as I know that the desk is in front of me. Like, that's like, I can't prove it to anybody else, but it is such a knowing, and it's not coming from any place. I can't reason with you on why this is.
Right.
It just is. And I have to follow it.
Right.
As you're justifying it or anything. And it's interesting when I'm hearing you tell that story, it's again another, I'm always saying this word, thread. It's going to be a thing. It's on brand, at least. but there's this thread of holding things, right? Like that came in again when you were talking about, even you're like, who am I? But you are a steward. You hold things, you steward things. You don't take ownership of it. You understand that it goes back out. That is part of your judgy sickness.
It's the better part, right? Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
it's that nurturing aspect. I really do carry I am a protector. I remember I've mentioned this to you before, but I taught for 12 years in public education. And so I would always have to the worst part about teaching is like teacher in service day bullshit, right? Like I fucking hate that shit. And they make you like do little like introductions and share one important thing about you, blah blah blah. Ooh, team building nonsense.
Yeah.
And so they make you write like a poem or something, and it's like Mad Libs for teachers. Ugh.
Get
so
out
gross.
of here. Well, because it feels so inauthentic. It doesn't feel natural. It feels forced.
It
like
does.
You're putting me in a little box here.
Yeah. And I always made everyone feel so uncomfortable because I have a really hard time being inauthentic, being like putting on that professional face. So I remember one time they made us stand up and do that poem or something. And I said something like, everyone was trying to identify what kind of role they play in the student's life. And there's a lot of like lovey-dovey language, like, I'm a mother, I'm a facilitator of learning, I'm a caretaker, I'm a giver, or something like that, right? And I stood up and I was like, I'm a warrior. I like to fight. Because I'm an advocate. I advocate for the students. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, you should just know that going in, we're probably going to have an argument. You don't follow the IEP, I'm going to be in your face. Okay, just so you know.
Yep. And I should say for anybody listening that when we keep talking about the 6, we were talking about numerology. Your life path number is 6,
right?
Because there's lots of, there's especially a lot of places that I'm in, right? There's lots of numbers for different things, like whether it's Enneagram or human design, and I know all sorts of things have all sorts of connotations with them, but
and I just read another book on numerology today. I'm pretty sure you've probably read it. It was kind of like the introduction, but I want to pick your brain about that because numerology is very new to me. You've kind of introduced it to me, and I'm reading it, and like part of it is hitting real hard, like, oh my god, that's very accurate. And then some of it I'm like, all right, well, that could apply to literally anyone, right? Like that's just a description of living life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff though anyway too, especially when it comes to any of the stuff that's trying to tell you who you are, right? There is always this Barnum effect. Isn't that what it's called? Like the Barnum effect thing where like, there was that one experiment where somebody gave like an astrology like description and to like 12 different people and they all said, oh my God, this is so me. And it was it's not anything.
It's just a general description of how people would feel. Okay, yeah.
Right, exactly. And it says different things. And it's like, well, you're very organized, but sometimes you're really messy, like
you have your off days.
Right.
You're very kind, but sometimes you can be unkind.
Like, right, exactly. Exactly. It draws the gamut of it. But at the same time, I like there's two pieces. I see this in very two distinct ways, right? One is, yes, of course there's that where maybe it's just so general, and there's like I've sort of committed to a while back of like living a symbolic life. Like one of my I Ching books is because like Carl Jung even was very much into the I Ching and his symbolic stuff, right? Symbolism. So a lot of the people who then follow up with I Ching talk about this whole symbolic life aspect. And I've kind of devoted myself to that a little bit to say, you know what? If I'm seeing these synchronicities, maybe there's not Maybe it's not like there's some grand plan or grand design or grand anything. It's just like something about my psyche, my soul, whatever I even want to call it, whatever story,
Frequency,
the
something,
frequency, the
vibration.
energy,
Yeah.
like whatever it is, there's something about my consciousness, my beingness that is picking up on these things, and it's something interesting to follow. And for me, as long as I don't stay too attached to one thing, knowing that it's all just sort of like water, like it's a river, it's moving, and
That I think is so critical in developing discernment in practice, right? Is giving yourself that freedom. I do think if we get too attached, it becomes dogmatic and like
yes.
doctrine. And that's the thing that I push back on a lot on TikTok, because I'm like, ew, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point of being non-secular and like is to have the autonomy? And I'm very autonomy driven.
Yeah. Same.
So yeah, so I need autonomy even from myself. Like, don't tell me what to do.
Right.
I say to myself.
Right. You said that one time. You're like, I'm a very bad employee. I mean, I'm my boss, but I'm a bad employee. Yeah.
And but like you said, like it's I love the language of thread. Actually, I love the language of weaving. I love the language of flow like water, because to me it makes more sense when you pick up on the frequencies and the synchronicities or the channeling messages. And I've mentioned this to you, that I see the divine very much as an energy.
Yes.
An energy that will come to you in the form that you can receive. So whatever that form may be, it's going to be different for any person, right?
Right.
And so, like you said, these themes keep coming up with me: the justice, the holding the story, the stewardship, the holding, right? The nurturing. And that's probably because those are the values that I have held throughout my life, regardless of whatever religion I'm practicing or spiritual practice I'm in or a stage of life I'm in. These are like core values to me. So that is the vibration I hold. This is how the divine is going to come through to me, is through that kind of thread, that story.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can then recognize that, and even recognize that that's sort of the lens that you're looking at things through. And so even like if something were to trigger you or something, like it helps you, that's that whole like know yourself thing, right? Like once you know that, you're like, oh, it's not a surprise every time. Then it's like, oh, this is a thing. This is mine. Oh my gosh. And all of it, you talk about the dogma. Oh my gosh. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to go back to too, but let's talk about the dogma for a second. I mean, we don't have to stay on this, but gosh, I've been so disheartened with all of the drama coming across my feed lately. I don't understand. It just seems like I guess I was smacked in the face with how much people are still stuck in the same pattern. I mean, wrap it up in a different language or a different thing. It's still this correction mode. Go ahead, say it. You have things to say.
No, I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yes, exactly.
I'm like, you not step out of yourself and see that you're doing this. And I don't get me wrong. Oh, I have to. It's messy. We've talked about that before too, about like how like developing your own ethics is tough work. There's no clear, like when somebody's really certain about something, I get kind of that. I'm like, really? I don't trust you anymore because you seem a little too certain about that. Right after I just say that there's a clear knowing, even in that, right? Like
I love that you said this. There's a clear knowing, and then you get wrapped up in nugma. And there's because we're touching on we're kind of limited with language here. We're touching on two very different feelings. This knowing internally that the message is for you, and for you, right?
That's it.
And then the knowing that your path somehow should resonate with everyone, that's a red flag to me.
That's where it goes off. Yeah. Universalizing your own knowing.
Exactly. There's no possible way that what I experience in my own craft and in my own journey, maybe it'll resonate with a few people to some extent, right? And so it's great to share these things. Like you and I do share a lot of what we've experienced, because there's like a bonding of like, oh, thank goodness I'm not alone in this feeling. But
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not necessarily that what you take from it, what you're learning, what you're gathering, and what I'm gathering, or how we get there. None of those things have to be the same to share that experience.
No,
You
nor
know?
does it have to be this thing where we're like, oh, we have found the one true way, and now and now we have to share it with everybody. You know, like, it's just like we're drifting, and sometimes our threads cross, and then we're like, oh, and then it sort of lights up a little bit because it's a connection point, really. Really is what it
Right.
is. But when and maybe that's what it is. It's the universalizing. And I get it. A lot of like the quote unquote drama, I get stuck a lot of times with, well, that's not important, or like the idea of something going too deep. There are a lot of things a lot of people are talking about that at a grand scale. It is important. It is important to have like these discussions about systemic issues. But gosh, when a systemic issue is like then like sort of collapsed onto one or two humans, that starts to be, it's like this disconnect between scope that
Right.
is, and which is the same thing I guess with the universalizing and inner knowing, right? It's a scoping problem.
A perspective. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel the same way in that, like, systemic issues cannot be fought through individual policing. That
Yes.
it just doesn't. And maybe it's because I worked in education for so long, because education does that. Education really does try to solve systemic issues that it's experiencing by policing the students, which it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
What are you doing? So, the let's take, for example, I'll try to take it out of the spiritual, more abstract sense and put it in a concrete. The phones in schools
Oh,
problem,
okay.
right? Okay, so we have the distraction of the phones, and that's a systemic issue, right? The phones themselves are just one version of inattentiveness. Before that, it was whatever we played with, right? We had
Right.
pogs, we had fidget spinners, there's always
Tamagotchi.
going
Yeah.
yeah, there's always going to be the distraction. It's just what the point of entry for distraction. So the systemic issue isn't the phone. It is that we are not engaging our students, and we haven't thought about realistically, should small bodies be asked to perform academic tasks for 6 to 8 hours a day?
Right.
That's a systemic issue.
Right.
That's how the function of the system. And instead of dealing with that and asking that question, we're going to lock up your phones. What the fuck?
Right,
that doesn't solves nothing.
Right. Especially with, again, even like contextually, the idea of like, at least where we live, right? Like the idea of like a kid not having their phone on them if an emergency were to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have all that context in place. Like, we are living in a new world. Like, as you were talking, I was like, well, this flows right into how I feel about the data center conversation too.
Let's go there. Let's go there.
I know, and I know you have a lot of delicious thoughts here on this one. For me, it's wild to me because, like, and that very much also is this whole, to lean on something you say a lot with the exploitation. Like, I think industrial revolution and all of that stuff, like anything that has like increased our ability to communicate and think and, just improve our lives, quote unquote, right? there's always the traditionalists who are like, oh no, that's the new thing is bad, right? But it's like, but then also let's not do it in the same pattern of like taking over, you know, communities and taking water from people. And I know you even have thoughts about like the whole like AI is not the only thing using data centers, right? Like everything that our whole infrastructure is just, we are paying attention to it now, right? But like maybe just not in this way.
Right.
It like, can we figure out a different way to do it? And that's like the that was reminding me so hard about like how you said this idea of like no AI feels much like lock the phones away to me. You know, it has a similar aspect. I want to hear you because you have a lot of really good thoughts about this.
Yeah, again, it's policing the individual, right? And when we're dealing with a systemic issue, because if again, I'm going to go back to where is the primary benefit going? Who's getting the most out of it? Why such big data centers, and why do they not care if their quote unquote customer base, which would be me, you, anyone living in the community, anyone relying on these water sources? I'm in New Mexico. This is impacting me directly. Our river is dry. So why do they not care? Because it's not for us.
Right.
It was rolled out to streamline and make more profit for these huge companies. You know who's switched over to AI? Facebook, TikTok, Amazon, DoorDash, everything with customer service that is a large used online platform has now AI customer service. That's where AI came in to play in the big realm, not Google, you know, at this point. So policing whether or not me or you use any kind of AI as a tool, one, it's kind of a benefit to the people who are the rich and elite who already have access to this and are using it on a gigantic scale, because then you're not informed on what this can do. You're not informed on how you could use it as a tool to compete.
Right.
And two, fighting individually keeps us distracted from, again, what is the major issue here? The major issue is that we have huge corporations that essentially have all the resources and are playing with our government and our resources and don't honestly care how much they damage the community as long as it makes them money in the short run.
Right.
They don't.
Right. That's the larger pattern that needs to break. I don't care if it's AI or what. It's
exactly.
And even really good point, because part of me is like, well, what am I going to do? Right? What could I be doing that would be like, am I feeding into it? Like, and I think about that all the time, even like of, okay, well, you know, like funny enough, like my husband really leaned in on this one. Like for a long time, he doesn't go to like Chick-fil-A, even though it's delicious. You know, he's like, he's going to stand on business on that. Right. And so I try in my way to do that, because, you know, death by 1,000 cuts and all. And yet at the same time, you're right. Like, that's not where, and that's why I hear you saying this too. Like, that's not where, and you just said it earlier, that's not what's funding this. What's funding this is the greedy grab, right? And that whole idea too, that smacked me across my face recently, is that this idea that if you can, like, this whole idea of conquering is actually morally justified. Like, the fact that you can overpower someone is the justification that you should be in power is so wild to me. I don't know how to break that pattern, but I thought about something from before, but it's a complete different topic.
No, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
It's a complete different topic. like you said that you had read another book about the numerology stuff, and you're like, ah, some of the things fit and some of the things don't. That's the funny thing about symbology. Like when it gets commercialized, like there's a real
Mm-hmm.
essence to these symbols that
Mm-hmm.
then they get distilled down into keywords, and then somebody makes a book out of the keywords and then runs a whole other on a whole other train about it. And it's like, okay, hold on. You have missed the essence of it. I remember when I was first learning the runes, which I still don't consider myself anywhere near expert in the runes. I have a set, like I have a wooden set that I do want to. There's a way that you sanctify or I don't know, consecrate. I don't know what the word is, like that you connect to the runes with like you prick yourself and you put your, a little
Your
bit of
blood,
your
yeah.
own blood on it. And you contemplate each one. I haven't been ready to do that, but I have the rune set that I'm going to do that with once I'm there. But when I was first learning them, I had like about a few of them were free versions on Kindle, like unlimited, but a couple other ones that I ended up buying. And I would look up these definitions of each one. And there's a website that I was on too that she does really good descriptions of the runes. And like I was trying to gather like the essence of what it is and not like the 3 keywords that you see on Pinterest,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And it is funny, like it is interesting how I was just talking to my friend about the I was rune because it comes up in Harry Potter apparently. And I've always thought of I was as closer to death, and I think of it because there's one, and this is the thing that comes up in Harry Potter too. It's like A was and I was. Um, and they're very similar in how you say them,
Mm-hmm.
but they're completely different runes. And I always remember I was because it's like I was meaning death.
Past. Okay.
Yeah, past. I was. And he's like, I thought that one meant defense, and it does in a way. It's about the Yggdrasil tree and protection from the storms outside and everything like that. But there is an element of death in there. But it was when I look now, I'm like, was I in an alternate reality? Because like I have such a strong connection to it being like I connected to the tarot death card too. Like it's like a transformation. It's the essence of the card, which I guess when you're talking about defense, there is like, sure, if you're about to die, you need to have your defenses up and it can be defensive. There's something about like the bows were made from this particular type of wood, and that's
Okay.
where the defense thing comes from too, as well as
And
like
maybe
hiding
even
in a tree.
connecting to the power of death, right? Like that's a big part of a lot of these ancient societies. Power of death is part of their defensive strategy and their defensive
Mm.
magic.
Oh, tell
Yeah.
me more about that.
Yeah. So, and you know that I'm like a little bit of a history buff and that I like to go down these rabbit holes to figure out
I
the
love it.
like symbology. What I love to see is when it's kind of similar across all these different cultures, right? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
that to me is like, that tells a human story, not just a
Yeah.
cultural story, not just this one point in time, but like, oh, there's something very human here, like that
Mm.
connects all of us. Ooh, I love it. It's delicious.
Mm.
So whenever I go into these little loopholes, yeah. And of course, like I've mentioned, the death mythology keeps coming up in my thread too, right? The ancestor work, the god of the dead, Egyptian dead mythology, and the scales have a lot to do with death too. The death card of transformation, and my husband is very into runes, and that's kind of the mythology he works with a lot. So he teaches me more
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the theme, and in the Greeks too as well, the theme of like connecting with death as a strategy to have that power over your enemy in war, and calling on like gods of death to protect, and just the power that comes with it, right? And then even in the Christian mythology, right, the four horsemen, death is a major player there too.
Oh.
Right. So the death is a powerful thing that connects humans, and I think when connecting back to that like protection, it's not just, it's like a threshold piece, and you also have to, like, many mythologies have this idea that in death it's a journey. You have to cross the threshold, you have to go through and pass the tests. So even getting to the afterlife is protected in some way for
Right.
us. Very interesting
Yes.
to me.
Yes. I love that. I was thinking too, as you were talking, like, it's like you have to, when you're saying passing the, like, the test, right? Like there is like you have to already have something in yourself. It's a very strange paradox. And that's why whenever I get to anything that either sounds like it could be on a cat poster, like it's so stupidly like coined, right? Or it's a paradox. I'm like, oh, there's deep truth here. Because going through a transformation, going through a threshold like that, there's so much surrender that is required. And yet, because it's the mush, right? It's the chrysalis, it's the completely breaking apart. But there is an inner trust.
Mm-hmm.
There is a strength that is needed, and there, in a way, it's immortal.
Right.
You know, and what's the nth degree of defense is that cannot be destroyed, right?
Oh man, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an essence of not being able to be destroyed, even though it's completely discombobulated.
Right. And but that's very human too, in this idea that the essence of the self somehow maintains, right?
Right.
And feeling that and trusting that, and then people will, like you said, the keywords will stick and it gets kind of distilled down, and then all of a sudden you have only this picture of a singular heaven, or you have this picture of you have to behave a certain way to get to in life, to get to the after, like it gets distilled down, like
yes.
But what you're talking about is like there's this process, this learning process, this inner trust and inner knowing that you have to develop, which is, unless you've actually gone through that, oh man, like you have to feel that. Like it's hard to know what that means and what that feels like, because it's not easy. It is not easy. It feels, like you said, very discombobulating. It feels like being I don't know, it felt like being like a puzzle got broken up into a bunch of pieces, and like I couldn't fit, like you just have to one by one, like there's no picture to guide you. You just have to
Right. There's a certain point where you don't even, I don't know, for me, it just felt like there's a certain point during major transformations like that where it's like, not only did the puzzle pieces fall off, but you've forgotten what a puzzle piece even is.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know what you're looking for.
Right.
This is that whole finding myself in the nothing thing. It's just like completely, we're at a certain point and you're like, I keep picturing it as like tumbling through space, right? Where there's like no orientation. There's no anything.
Right.
And you just have to start with where you're at. At a certain point, you just gotta, like when you say like you just grab one piece. To me, it was even before that. It was just like noticing that a piece is a thing.
And you probably got a lot deeper, because like I still feel like really anxious when I get so disoriented, and I know that there are points that I have to do this. Like you have to just go through it. You have to. It's like a relinquishing of control, which I struggle with. I do. And I think a lot of people do, which is why we see the dogma is the safety, right? Like the dogma is familiar. The dogma is, well, no, I have the secrets and here it is. Not really.
Right. Like, because somebody says, here's a thing. And you're like, oh, good. I can stay still for a second. I can stop being disoriented for a second. But it's not your thing. That's there was something you said before. It was reminding me that with this whole distillation and where it becomes dogma, it is, that's what it was. With the
somebody goes through a thing like this, right? We go through this thing, we go back and we try to share this wisdom, and it ends up becoming this platitude that then ends up being a rule. When really, I think like the master teachers or whatnot, right? Like that have passed down this wisdom. They're trying, in my opinion, they're trying to describe what the path looks like from the other side,
Mm-hmm.
not the rule book on which to go through it.
Right. Right.
Hang on.
I just want to make sure Dad's coming.
Yeah, I know. He's coming. And we have a ticket for him. It's good. We're going to go see a movie tomorrow.
Oh, nice. My daughter's the same way. She's like, wait a minute, Mom. My daughter's a Capricorn, and she's very organized.
Oh,
make a schedule, and she's like, Mom, Dad, it's 11:30.
Gosh, yeah. Right, exactly. Wow. To have a Capricorn. Woo! My moon's in Capricorn. I get that. That was another thing for me. Like you talk about like the scales and everything, like having, coming back to the idea, I was crying about it a couple months ago, where I realized that structure really it was there my whole life. It really was. And the climbing and the structure, like that Capricorn moon essence, it was there the whole time. I fought with it. I've tried to surrender from it, but there's a certain aspect of like once you let go of it being something you need, and then realizing that you can survive without it, but then coming back to it to know that it's okay to be there too. There's something kind of sweet about that.
Right.
Go ahead.
If we're framing it in the sense of like, I guess, how would I frame this? Like, I don't want to, my daughter's not controlling it. She's like the sweetest person. So when I say Capricorn, just very organized, routine oriented, and also on the spectrum, so that that also means a lot to her. And I do my best, given that I'm such an airy, I follow the dopamine, and I do my best. And it's good. But here's the thing is like, I had, for so long, denied myself that nature because I was trying to fit in this society that really, capitalist society really demands like constant work, constant climb the ladder, constant organization, constant prove yourself worthy, even though it's not a meritocracy at all. People love to pretend it is, but it's not, right? So I had denied my nature for so long, it like made me sick, like physically. And letting go of that was really hard, in that it was like, that was that dogma, that orientation for me. It wasn't a spiritual dogma. Instead, here it's a societal dogma. It's this idea that I am only valuable because of how much of a hard worker I am. Look at all the accomplishments I've done. It's just wrapped in a different package, right? And letting go of that, but then coming back, and now, I'm still accessing those skills in a different way, running the business, but coming back to it, like you said, from a different perspective, in a perspective of that, like, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm not proving my worth here. Instead, I'm doing because it brings me joy. That feels so different from, I have to have this or the world will collapse, right?
100%. There's an ease to it. I know we talked about ease and effort a while back, and I still have thoughts that I'm trying to pull out of myself for that. But yeah, there's a certain level of, I want to say comfort, but it's not comfort in the same comfort of like, leaning on that dogma. It is a comfort in knowing that, like, it is very much that. It is very much I'm doing this for me. Like, this is not to prove anything. This is not to, like, this doesn't have to happen. You said it. The world's not going to end. It's not going to explode if you don't do this, but I still can do this.
Right.
right?
It does. It feels very different. And I think there are a lot of people who are just starting the journey, or maybe even it, maybe thinking they're on this journey and they haven't quite gone through that stage of like when those things fall away, like you said, and you find yourself in that nothing, and you can't, like, all of those little pieces of yourself have to, like I said, I called it my tower time, like things
Right.
that I really thought were my foundation crumbled beneath me. And to some extent I had control over it, and to some extent I didn't. So I had to face it. I had to face that this was no longer a thing I could stand on. And so you have to do the work at that point and go, okay, well, if I don't have this, my foundation that I thought I had, what do I have?
Right.
And that's a fucking hard question to ask, and feel okay when you don't know the answer.
Right. Right.
It's scary.
That's a whole other journey. So
Yeah.
it's like you have to go through that. Like, forget whatever goal you were working towards. You have to first be okay that you don't know the answer right now. It's sort of one of the first layers to me about peeling off that proving yourself, and sort of like the making the mistakes thing too. It's like I had to lean into so much of like, this might even be the wrong answer for me, let alone what everybody else is going to think. Like,
Right.
it's like in that song, Alanis Morissette's song "Ironic," which I do actually think is ironic sometimes. When she's like,
it wasn't the ironic definition, right?
right. But I think there's a certain point of it too. The whole, it's funny how life helps you out. It's the good advice that you just didn't take. And it's not that, I think the ironic meaning in that is that, like, by all reasonable accounts, you should have taken that advice, but you didn't. And that's what moved you forward. Right. Is the very thing that moved you forward. The quote unquote good advice.
Right. and wasn't even meant for you. Like, good advice is good advice, sure, but sometimes good advice isn't your good advice. Or like you said, yeah, sometimes you got to go through the shit. Like, you have to experience the bad choice, or
yes,
or the turbulence that comes. It's not even like, oh, you made a bad choice. Like, it's more like, experience the turbulence, live the life, make the mistake because the mistake was meant to be made,
right. It is actually, in my opinion, a form of embodiment. You can intellectually understand it, you can understand it in the mind, maybe even the spirit or the soul, but like, it is the experience of the embodiment of it. It's sort of like, even if I were to tell myself a story about it, it's like, I am here. I am here to do it. Like, in my perspective, my soul could already understand it. It's like, I like to think of, I sort of personify my soul into this sort of game method where I think, okay, well, my soul watched a movie, or it watched a roller coaster online and was like, I want to go ride that ride.
Right.
I can know that I'm going to fall off at that point, but that's what I came here to experience.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that was the thing that I thought was really interesting about the numerology books that you had, or that I'm starting to read and look into, is this. Now, I don't know how much I will agree or believe in soul contracts so much, but I'm open to it. But I'm kind of like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I'm a complicated person in that, I have this feeling that you are guided divinely, but at the same time, I'm like, but there isn't some predestiny that I'm supposed to, what I mean? And for a hot minute during my practice and my path, I kind of leaned into that idea, because it was, I felt like, well, let me challenge my belief system here, because I'm so much of a free will. And again, I have a high need for autonomy. So what if I did believe? What if I did believe that there was some preordained path. But I couldn't wrap my head around it because I do think evil deeds exist. So how do
Right.
I, like that's weird. Why would
Yeah.
we predestine such evil atrocities? That's a weird thing. I can't
Mm-hmm.
wrap my head around it. And then I sat with it for a while. I sat with this idea that like maybe even the book wasn't from me. Maybe the book was that I wrote was the guide speaking through me, and
Mm.
it was predestined in some way. I sat with that for a while, and I was like, that's fucking weird. Can't do it.
Right. Right.
That seems so to me. I was like, actually, as much as I think I'm trying to let go of an ego, but when I sit with that, that feels more narcissistic than anything. That feels more
Right.
egotistical to say that somehow my actions are preordained and blessed. That's weird.
Right. Right.
But I do
And
believe
that,
that I'm guided. I'm guided.
right. Right. And that's you going through that. Like you didn't attach yourself to the idea. You let yourself explore that.
Mhm.
And you found it not to be true for you.
Right.
And you're not saying that, like, and when you say it's weird, I know you're coming from a place of like, yeah, that's not my, that's, this shirt doesn't fit.
Right. Right.
Like, somebody else can wear that shirt, but it doesn't fit me.
Right. Right. And it just like I was thinking about like my personality. If I sit there and tell myself this is your destiny, like that just it'll go to my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Yeah. I definitely was very big on them for a while. And where I'm at with it right now, it feels like a story that is helpful. It is all of these things, right? All of these things that we could say could be dogmatic or could be certainty. I feel like as when they're a useful form. This is my leaning into my structure, right? Like of knowing that I am a part of my essence's structure, at least for now. It seems like it keeps like there's this like metal memory that keeps coming back to that. Where it's like, okay, that's a useful story to
Mhm.
be able to contextualize, because otherwise, we can't live in the void all the time. There has to be some sort of a structure to it. And if it can help contextualize something, then that's one thing. But then where it goes into sort of like ego or some sort of protective thing for me is when I say, then it must be true. Right. And I'm like, well, that may be true, or that may be a lens I could look at it through.
Right.
But that's not necessarily the only lens.
Right.
It's just a pattern that I'm looking at.
Mhm.
It's helping me to connect something. It's giving me some continuity. But yeah, I went through that too when I was thinking about alignment and that whole like, well, what is the right thing to do here? Even like thinking about like discernment and intuition and all of these things of like, am I on the quote unquote right path? And it's like, well, what even is alignment? And it's just, I have found that it is an honest recognition of what is true now. Like,
The now.
that
The now.
yeah, the now. Right. It's coming back to the now, even when it comes to relationship and contextualizing anything. It always comes back to the now for me. Um, yeah, I could tell all these stories about it, but I find that I even let go of the idea that I made the choice somehow, like, which it falls into soul contracts, right? Like that I made the choice for this life, that I chose all of these things, which I know can get like sticky too, because it's like, well, what do you mean chose to be in a difficult situation? Or like, does that mean that children who are in like abusive situations, they have chosen to be there? It feels yucky. And that could be assertive spiritual bypassing in and of itself. You could internalize that to say, well, to not accept that means that you're not allowing that to be universally true. But I don't like anything to be universally true anyway. But yeah, yeah, it brings up, but perhaps the questions that it brings up are the point.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And
I don't know.
I'm not opposed to playing with that idea, because as I was reading it, and my husband was like, "It's so funny that you're reading this now, because this is the thing that I would have seen you push back on so much before your witchy journey is like soul contracts and numerology." And I was like, I'm still feeling that. I'm still feeling it right now, even after all I've seen and been through. I'm still feeling it within myself, and so and this is a relatively new concept, so I have to, my initial reaction right now is literally initial reaction to it, and it might change over time as I sit with it and see through different lenses, right? Because you can't see all of what you're learning all at once. You don't get it right away. And for anything in a new skill, you have to practice. You have to think about it. You have to come back to it. You have to put it down and go do something else and come back. So, but I do kind of see, like, when I think about it for myself, I push back. But when I think about how my daughter, it kind of sits differently in, like, because of the way that she talks. She's so she's a smart kid. I'm like blown away by her constantly. She's so amazing. But the things that she will say and the way that she makes me, like, see the world differently. She asked my husband, just jibber jabbering. She sat there and she turned to him and was like, "Do you think people are just like picking a belief and going with it because they don't actually know?"
From the mouths of babes, literally.
Like, and he just sat, both of us are just sitting there like, I wasn't prepared to talk to my 6-year-old about this, but at that point you just listen. You just listen. Because what else can you do as a parent? Listen. And she's kind of going through it, and she's like, I do believe in the spirit world and maybe a little bit of heaven. And because she's exposed to a lot of different, like, that's the main difference between my upbringing, besides the trauma, but the structure of the upbringing. The major difference that we're going to have between me and her is that I was raised in a Catholic household. She's being raised in a spiritual household. Very different. That's a very different way of seeing religion. So she's exposed to a lot of different ideas about religion because we're outliers, and everyone around her is Christian or Catholic. So she has to hold, whether we wanted her to or not. It's not like I wanted her to, but she does, just through interaction and knowing people. Her friends talk about heaven, they talk about Christianity, they go to church. So just by the nature of being different, a different household, she has to hold ideas that there are different belief systems at this age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even just the idea that you are pointing out that she has to hold that, I wonder too, another child may not necessarily. Another child may hear all of the stuff at school and fight back with you on what you're saying. So it's interesting too that she's able to hold that. And I hear that, you bring that too, the holding energy. There it is again. You're nurturing. That is part of the environment that you're nurturing, is that you're creating that space where, or at least from my perspective, from hearing you talk about it, right? Like, you're creating the space where that makes it safe to hold both.
Right. Yeah. And I've told her so many times, like, if you don't want to do it this way, you don't have to. I'm not going to go to church. But when you're older, if you choose that, then absolutely, it's your choice.
Yeah. That got my that's when I took I have a cross from I forget if I told you the story before, but my cross from confirmation that has like a dove on it. I really liked my confirmation.
I was really into it at the time. I like did one of the readings and all of that. Like I felt like I saw the Holy Spirit come down, like during the like from the in the church. Like I had an experience. And my oldest he's 18 now, and he's exploring things, and he's really into the Holy Spirit right now. And I was like, oh, here. And I brought I have this box that my grandmother had carved for me, and I had it in there, and I took it out of there and I showed it to him, and I told him the story about it. And he was like, oh, wow. Cause I don't really necessarily share all that. He was like, oh, wow, interesting. And I said, do you want to hold on to it? He's like, no, that's okay. So I have it hanging up now, just as a, it doesn't necessarily, holds historical significance for me because it's part of who I came to be today. Right. But other than that, it doesn't hold any current. The only thing I'm close to in that respect is the Magdalene stuff. But I hold it there because I feel like it opens up the space. I don't know. It was interesting to see him. Like, we don't talk about that at all. And he's just like, hey, so the Holy Spirit. I'm like, okay, cool.
And I mean, it's so important that, you hold that space for the kiddos. And this is where what I wanted. I'm going to talk about Imperfect Witch a little bit, if that's okay. Cause it goes back to,
please.
It goes back to my intention with it. And I get frustrated with myself and with the process of running it as a business because, ideally I would love to this is free. This is free.
Right.
I would love that. I can't sustain it that way because it does cost money and time to do the things I'm doing. And we live in a society that requires me to have money, Yep.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to me again, I went back and forth and I really thought about, like, is this path, this is that alignment, is this path the right path, quote unquote?
Right.
Is this in alignment for me? Is this okay to do? And, where is my line? And like, when does it become unethical? Because kind of like it's a weird space when we are selling spiritual products. To me, that's a weird space to be in, right?
Yeah.
Even though, like, Christianity, there's Christian stores, they sell idols and candles and things like that, and I don't think anything of it, but I guess now, because I'm the one doing it, I never thought anything of it either before. Like,
right.
People selling oils, I never thought of that as like a thing until I started doing it. And then I was like, there's an ethics here that I have to like sit with. And it came down to me thinking about like the younger generation and the role that we play online in terms of spreading spiritual awareness, the role we play in selling them spiritual products, especially, at the height of the controversy with this young person who was reading the tarot.
Right.
Because to me, I'm like, well, she's so young.
Yeah.
Like, let her figure it out.
Right. Right. I know.
Let them figure it out. And so I had to sit with it and think about, again, going back to exploitation. That's my line.
I was really into what you were talking about. I hope you didn't lose your train of thought.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I've worked with kids for a long time, so I get it.
You're like, let this girl figure out her path.
Yeah, and just so that has a big weight for me while I'm doing Imperfect Witch, is to ensure that again, not pushing a dogma, because there are young people who are exploring right now, and we have to give them that space. Like you said, like just talking to your son, just holding it, just this is right there, or even just holding their big feelings and emotions in that moment. It's a very natural, like there's so much quick judgment to kids behaving a certain way. And what behavior communicates is a they're figuring out their big emotions, and we can't expect them to handle big things like adults, like
Oh my
middle-aged
gosh.
people, you know?
Right. I barely can handle my big feelings.
Exactly. Exactly.
And why does the first thing have to be contain, contain,
Right.
contain? And I get that, like, and this is part of the thing that I struggle with is that, like, my big thing is like, don't cause harm to others. But then that even becomes like a weird line because at what point does my impact, is it my impact or is it how somebody's taking something? At what point do I have to make myself so small so that I don't bother anybody,
Right. We can't go there. Yeah. Yeah.
right? But yet there is some sort of line to, there is something where you're like causing harm, you know? Um, but none of that is for a child to figure out. Like a child just needs to let their feelings like
Right.
be.
Right. They're allowed to figure out where that line is by even sometimes crossing it, because
Right.
they don't know where the line is. They have no concept of the boundary yet of themselves versus other people. Like, that's all the learning experience, and our job as the adults is to hold that space, to hold the to point out the line, not to contain, but to just let them know,
Mhm.
like, all right, well, this action right here
Right.
cross that line, and the consequence of that was this hurt my feelings, or whatever, like however you explain it, depending on
Right.
the action. But we
Right.
get so quick to punishment, policing, putting it in their place, like, and then we end up in the situation that I think we just witnessessed online,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Where everyone's in the wrong.
Right. No, I know. I know. I remember you messaged me. You're like, "Oh, this is messy. This is messy." But
Messy.
then, right, like how to circle it back around. You had said something before about with Imperfect Witch, and I mean, it's even in that name, right? About you have to be able to make the mistakes, right? And so, wow, how much we've had to deconstruct that
Mm-hmm.
then of course it's important when you're raising children then to like think, okay, I don't want to pass this wound on to you. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to have to deconstruct that. I want to hold, like you said, I want to give you the boundaries. I want to give you an extra space to feel through this where you're not hurting others or you understand the consequences of your actions. But like that whole idea of like going through the mistake. Let me create the space where you can make the mistake and go through it and learn what that process feels like before I'm demonizing you for making a mistake.
Right.
That's something I don't want you to have to deconstruct later.
Right. We can prevent that from the next generation. And even that's something I think that I try and hold, not just in my own family for my own kid. Of course, that's the primary motivation there. But like, if I'm going to present Imperfect Witch and books and knowledge and say I have courses to educate, well, then I need to keep that space for people of all ages, but especially, we have a couple of young mutuals, or young
Mhm.
on the younger side. They're adults, but they're very young adults,
Yes.
right? So to
Mhm.
hold that space for them is
Mhm.
really important to me. And
Right.
again, I think about this young person who had so many people following her, and the weight that must have, the weight of that. That's
Yes.
a,
Yes.
that's a huge responsibility. I
It is.
couldn't do that now at almost 40 years old.
It
That's
is. Right. Right, right, and then all the projection that can then gets put onto her for
mhm.
that, right? Like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. So where did you end up falling with the I know you had drawn that ethical line with the exploitation on
Mhm.
Imperfect Witch. How did you are you still working through that of how to I know that comes up in a lot of spiritual spaces with we're in a capitalist society. We have that is the current thing. I know a lot of people are moving
trying to change the paradigm into like bartering system. I know you're even doing, you have the one class that you have up, you have a sliding scale.
Mhm.
There's, you're creating a space for creators to go on there where you're, doing it in a way that's not like, exploiting the creators that are on your platform. So I
Right.
see you being mindful about that, but I know, how are you working through that? Where are you at with that right now?
I'm still, I am still working through it. And I think that there's going to be, I think it's going to be a loop over and over again that I'm going to have to deal with, in a similar way that like certain parts of my spiritual growth that come back, and I have to go back and relearn, relearn that not everything is in my control, but in a different,
Mm-hmm.
Perspective. But essentially right now, I think, okay, do I make what do I make things that are accessible, like on an affordable level? Yes, I think my prices are fairly accessible to anyone. Like the sliding scale is available, but even without the sliding scale, relative to many of the other courses, I just got an email from my mother-in-law who sent me over an herbalism course that's being taught at the college, which continuing ed, it's $250,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and mine is 40.
Right.
And I guarantee you, it's probably more. Mine is probably more in depth because I've taken these continuing ed courses, and they're usually pretty shallow.
Right.
But I try to stay affordable so that it's accessible. I try also to just be giving, like people who, and you know this, like people who do support Imperfect Witch or patronize the business. I also give, like,
Yeah.
here's more.
You're very generous. Yeah. Yeah.
um, in that way that people, because what I feel really deeply in terms of like giving, it's not about giving to give to say, oh, now we're in a trade, now we're in this, but rather
Right.
when people feel seen and cared for and given to, it lifts the spirit, and it like brings that energy forward, so maybe they pass it on in a different way. Like, have you ever experienced when you're in the drive-through at Starbucks and someone pays for your drink behind
I haven't experienced it, but I know what you're talking about. Yep.
yeah, and it's such a one. It like it just brightens the day, and so in that day, you end up doing something even nicer, right? So
Right.
like,
Right.
I try to bring that energy to Imperfect Witch because that's kind of how I live my life anyway. So why not bring it? Do I still sometimes feel like, oh man, like, do I still sometimes feel icky? I'm like, I have to promote. Promoting makes me feel icky.
Right. 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 Right.
Hate it.
But it's like you have like, I mean, I guess you don't have to be. It can be word of mouth, but then at a certain point, for what you want to do for it, I mean, I feel very blessed, quote unquote, that my current job, it sustains me, right? Like I'm very, for now at least, knock on wood, right? Like I'm able to do, but then I wouldn't be able to do, like, have a full-time shop,
Right.
Yeah, and even like I love the idea of trusting the energetic, pay it forward sort of idea.
Mhm.
And this is definitely an and recognizing that we live in an exploitative world,
Mhm.
right? Because you could do that, and I think that's also, I think it's such a double-edged sword, right? Because, and I don't think that this, I'm not projecting this onto you, but I think a lot of people have this idea that if they offer too much, it can be, people could take advantage, quote unquote. People can
Mhm.
exploit it, right? And I mean, I guess there's always that. I like to think, I can get idealistic about it, to think, well, you're creating this space where you're not going to invite those people into your space. And I'm sure that you have protective magic up against that, right? Like, too, like, where,
My husband actually does, because
oh, good.
yeah, because he sees that in me. He sees me doing the overgive. That is one of the the lessons I've had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like since starting my spiritual journey, I do feel like that has reduced quite a bit, as in the people who like to suck the energy
Mm-hmm.
and take advantage are definitely less drawn to me in
Yeah.
general. And I think it's because I honor my boundaries more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so having to honor yourself and to have that self-worth and hold that, it's a little easier to feel like that's not like, it just feels like those people don't find me as easily. I'm not, it's like and it's in itself, it's like a glamour magic, I feel like.
Right.
And so I'm happy to share this because I think it's a little bit of like some hope. Um, I'm happy to share that so far in the generosity that I've given, I've received it just as much back.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
feel like a single person that I've interacted in this community with has tried to take advantage of that generosity in any way.
Right.
I feel like
Right.
everyone has been really supportive. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And I'm looking at time. How are you feeling?
It's I'm totally okay, but I also understand if you got family stuff and whatever you want to do, it's up to you. I'm good.
I think I'm good to keep going a little bit. If
I'm really excited to do this because like I said, we can go off on tangents together, and I think this is like a place for me where I can't like talk about on TikTok. I don't feel like you can really say all the things without it, like, to me, when I'm talking just to myself on the phone, the camera, I feel like it gets muddled, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a little muddling there, but then also you've talked about it before too, because of the nature of how TikTok is now. On one hand, I gotta tell you, TikTok specifically, that algorithm is psychic. There is something about the way that energy flows on that platform is really, really damn cool. But it's so hard to get the nuance.
It
It's
is.
just soundbite, and you even said that it's like when you get more controversial. I don't like being certain about like putting out a certainty. But it's like sometimes I start my videos like that because for the 10-30 seconds that people are going to engage with it, that's going to get the engagement because you're saying something really dramatic that people either like, oh yes, or ooh, you know.
But they pause.
Yeah, they pause. They pause.
And apparently that's like a big thing that I'm not really good at.
Right? But I don't like that. I struggle because I'm like, I don't want to. That's not my vibe. And yet at the same time, it's a brighter light almost to say that. Anyway, so what was what's happening with your account? You're
Oh, my videos are definitely getting suppressed. Definitely. I feel like the people who get to see it most often are like the 5 people that I talk to almost every day. And for the most part, I see that people have to like go to my profile to see the videos I post. So I'm not getting pushed out to the followers. And even though I get new followers every day. So occasionally some video somewhere is showing up on someone's feed, but it's usually not the recent one. So it makes it completely basically useless if I'm promoting an event like the class. It's a useless tool, which sucks.
Yeah.
Which sucks because the whole community that I'm trying to work with,
it's right. And so you were thinking you're going to try YouTube now?
Yeah, because it turns out my website can link to YouTube. And so I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but they can link, and I'm going to try working on that for a little while. Also, it can link to Instagram, so I might try that a little bit. And also, I'm thinking about doing more podcasts. I think because you can have the conversations, like it can be like me and my husband have all these wonderful conversations. Oh, I have to share this with you. So the day you pulled the gift card
okay,
was so interesting I don't know if you experience this, but my husband and I will experience what we call like the droughts of magic. We just can't feel the energy flowing. Like it's just not
Mm.
flowing. We're stagnant. And ever since it's to me, I'm like, oh man, this is rough because I've now felt this. I've now seen this. I can't go back. It's kind of addicting. It's kind of like, because when the manifestations occur, when the little story unfolds, it's so beautiful and like exciting and thrilling. Like every time it's so wow,
Right.
so amazing, right?
Yeah.
That once you have a little taste of that, it's kind of sad if you're like, oh, I don't feel that right now. But I've gotten a little more accustomed to it. I'm like, there's highs and lows, right? Just like in life. But my husband is relatively new to his practice, so we really very recently went through this little drought of magic, I'll call it, where we just didn't feel the energy, we didn't feel connected, we didn't feel aligned, and life becomes to us like exponentially harder, but in the littlest ways. It's all the little tiny things that you trip you up over and over and over again. That when you're feeling aligned and in tune, somehow those things they feel like they just kind of flow, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that, and we were talking about the gifts that we've received through this practice and whether or not we've been showing enough gratitude. And then we kind of talked about, like, I was like, it's interesting to me because now I'm sitting with this idea of gratitude as in groveling, or gratitude as in like, oh my God, thank you so much. And at what point am I becoming entitled if I'm like, I manifest this and so it's coming, I'm
Right.
deserving. And I was just sitting with it. I was like, this is weird, like, because there's this I don't remember what he said to me, but I said that's two sides of the same coin. The shame of having a gift that you feel undeserving of, this like overly gracious, this thank you so much, I'm undeserving. And then
Right.
entitlement almost of I'm deserving.
Right.
They feel like the same coin to me. So
Yep.
to me, I was like, gratitude does feel kind of, I'm always talking about gratitude. And now it feels kind of like a loaded word to me. And not 2 hours later, you pull that card and you start talking about it.
With that energy of deserving. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. And it's because I do think that it's because it's wrapped up in it. The same is the deservingness of it. It's like, and then that's where by the end of that, I realized that it was that it's so impermanent. It's that stewarding thing again. I still can't find a better word for it than grateful. I am like willing to be here. Like I'm willing to receive this. And it was I think that too. This idea that it is a recognition that hey, this thing wasn't in my field before. That wasn't here. Like even if it's just somebody gives you a cup of tea, I was like, I didn't have that cup of tea before. Now I do. And I'm really actually quite enjoying the fact that I have a cup of tea in front of me right now. Whether or not I deserve this cup of tea is like not the point.
And the deserving part is a really heavy layer that I really wonder like where it came from. Because I'm thinking about, my husband talks a lot about his journey about understanding, taking care of things and understanding gifts are really hard for him. He did, I can mention this because he did already make a public video about it. He said that the gift giving had been used to control him for a long time.
Oh, right.
And yeah, I can see that his parents are like that. And that, let me give you this thing. It's very precious. You must take care of it. And whether or not it was truly for him or whether or not it was for them to control,
Yeah.
is a different story. So I'm like, that's a deep layer of something that I think exists very deep in American culture.
Yeah.
I think that's very capitalistic.
Yeah.
It costs money. This is precious. Here's this gift. And we often celebrate and give gifts not just because, right? Just because we love or whatever. It's always tied to an earning or a title. You get gifts on Mother's Day for earning it, being a present mother, or for being a present father, or for graduation or some kind of accomplishment. You had to earn it. You had to
Yep.
be deserving of it. You get a paycheck only if you deserve it. You get to live in a house only if you play by the societal rules. Everything
Hmm.
is like we build in this idea that you can only have good things if you are deserving.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. As you're talking, it's making me realize too, this going back to this idea of the for some reason I think it's like that conquering thing, right? Like this whole setup of if you can take it or if you can overpower something, then it's yours, which
mm-hmm,
means that it holds the same energy of it's this ownership thing. It's this,
mm-hmm,
if you own anything, if you have anything, if you have anything in your possession, then it must mean that there was some power you had to be able to take it morally, right? Like
mm-hmm,
you must have had some power to be able to take it. And so, like, if it is just like sort of quote unquote freely given, then
mm-hmm,
what did you do? What is your moral standing for what power you have to be allowed to have that, right? Like,
right.
and that's where I think maybe that deserving thing might play into like, if you're receiving where it's the groveling side, where if you're receiving something where you feel like you put in no effort or you didn't overpower to get it, it's
Mm-hmm,
like I am a lowly creature who like didn't have like I am, this is charity.
right. Right.
um
And then there's always the string attached to charity somehow too. And
right,
yeah.
right, because then it's always to me it's just, I don't know, I kind of obsessed with power dynamics anyway in general. It just goes back to that power of like who who is the one that holds the power, you know, and
Mm,
power is seems to move in this earth through money,
mm-hmm.
at least in our society in the United States, at least.
Right.
I don't know enough about the whole world to say.
Well, and I mean, globalization has happened, and so they control a lot of the world now. I mean,
Right.
we have. Is it true? I think I heard this somewhere. I try not to keep up too much with the bullshit because it's just absurd at this point. But the Elon Musk guy is like a trillionaire now or some
Oh my
bullshit like
god.
that. Would I that can't be true because I'm like trillions,
No,
that's
yeah. No, I think
nonsense.
so.
But like
Have you
Bill,
seen the like when they, yeah. Have you seen when they do like the piles of rice?
yeah,
Have you ever seen those videos? It's just it doesn't make sense actually.
at
And I'm
all.
coming from at all. And I understand it. The story, right? The story of protecting that or protecting the idea of that. I grew up with that, right? Like I grew up with that idea of like, don't like, if I work hard enough, I should be able to have whatever I want. But there's a certain point of like, why are you, and I'm still unpacking a lot of this of why are you hoarding all of that? You know, why do you need so much of it here in front of you now, just in
Mhm,
case? It is not aligned with the quote unquote frequency of trust in what I've been finding, that
right,
if I've been able to not have 17,000 rolls of toilet paper, you know, it's because
right.
I trust that when I need toilet paper, it will be there. I'm using a stupid example, but you know what I mean?
But it is and it isn't in the fact that there is a true insecurity built in to us because
Hmm.
of the capitalist nature and the power and the taking of resources. I mean, it comes from the news stories of people going during 2020. We saw it, when everyone went and took all the water and fought over toilet paper. And I was like,
Yep.
what are we doing, guys? If we have such a scarcity mindset because our society really does play this card over and over again that you are only deserving of like basic necessities, housing, water,
Right.
food. You are only deserving if you have earned this status.
Yes.
Very, colonial, very imperialist mindset. And I don't know, I don't really know our way out except for, in little ways we share, in little ways we remind each other, actually, we can help each other. We don't have to rely on the overlords, because that's what causes it, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what
And it's
causes
this,
the insecurity.
I think it is twofold, right? It is this idea of we can trust each other,
Mm-hmm.
and we can trust ourselves enough that we know where our own boundaries are.
Right.
Right? I think I even heard you say it, that like you're getting better at doing it because you know where your boundaries are
Right.
and you're holding to them.
Yeah.
That is something that parenthood will teach you, because you can't not have boundaries with a child.
Right. Right. And if you don't respect your own boundaries, like, yeah, it's gonna be a rough ride for sure.
Right. Because
Yeah.
it's like you're looking outward to say, is this too much, or is this enough, or I don't want to take enough, I don't want to take the space, I don't want to take the resource, and yet when I have it, I want to give it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's tough.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that that's where, again, going back to what we said about that dogma, we have to deconstruct it. We have to allow threads to happen. We have to allow the flow. We have to allow inner knowing without it being, that's how you must behave. Because when we constantly put that policing of like behavior, we're reinforcing the idea of deserving again.
Right. Yeah, right.
You're deserving of compassion, you're deserving of space, you're deserving of who gets to decide about deservingness?
Yeah. Right.
I don't want anyone deciding whether or not I'm deserving.
Yeah.
And I don't want to decide if someone's deserving. I think we got to let that layer go a little bit.
Right.
And then instead think about, where are our boundaries? Where are our individual boundaries of what we allow into our space?
Right.
We can do that, and we can hold that. We can build more trust. Like you said this in a video before, you said the more compassion I give myself and self-trust or something like that, the more I can hold for others.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because and then that was like the whole other side of it, because it was the resentment thread that I was working through on that one, because I really found myself that like when I was like resenting that somebody else could have something, it was just a projection of that I wasn't allowing it for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and even on top of that, like understanding when you do this work and you do, if you're going to dissolve the deservingness, like for a long time there, I had to be okay with like either being an asshole or being wrong. I'm like, I just have to do it because I have to drop the am I deserving, right? You have to at least drop it for a second. The am I deserving or not? It might end up being that there's some other thing that comes up that it turns out that, oh yeah, that was you were exploiting somebody or something, right? But I have to let myself make that mistake, because I can trust myself enough to know that if I know I have to drop the deserving coin, period.
Right.
And then once I drop that, if it turns out that was the only gateway that I had to not exploit somebody, then I'll find what the other thing is. I can't have the safety of deserving or not to find what the other thing is.
Right. Because it's going to keep you in that space instead of exploring what the other thing is. Right. I had that awakening, or I think I mentioned to you, my husband is a one as well, because you're a one. Yeah.
In numerology. Yeah.
In numerology.
Yeah.
So he's going and he's like slowly watching them, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to watch all of them. That's creepy."
Like, no, right. All of a sudden, I get a bunch of hearts from him.
But he had to tell me something, and it really kind of like hurt my little inner child wound.
Oh.
But he had to tell me. But I was like, okay, I gotta take what he's actually saying here, which was, he said, I have to decenter your reaction, and I was like, oh my god, but me. And then eventually I like, okay, inner child, calm down. He's not saying you're not important. Okay, so then, but what he was trying to say is, in order for me to go through the journey that I need to go through, I have to stop caring so much about what other people think of me, and I have to allow myself, like you said, make the mistake, be the asshole. And my husband is very afraid of being an asshole, and I'm like okay with that. Like, I'm okay being perceived as an asshole. I have been an asshole many times,
right?
and I'm like, sometimes it's necessary for me to be that. He finds that like really like bother, like he cannot, right. And I'm like, yeah, that is part of self-acceptance. That is a journey, and I have to give you space to do that, which does mean that you do have to do, like, you have to drop what I think. You have to drop that coin of, am I being perceived as an asshole? Am I deserving? Am I, you do.
Yes.
You your way.
Right.
To that inner trust.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've gone through that. I forget the specifics, but I feel like there a couple months back, like there was a couple of things with like one of my friends where I'm like, there were times where it's like, well, that's wrong. And I'm like, I can't care about that right now. I know how that makes me sound right now, but I actually can't, for what I have to go through, for what I have to learn. I literally have to drop that lens, and it's very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah. And I totally get in my own head about that sometimes, about like, because I have been an activist for most of my life. There are times where, like right now, in everything that is going on, everything is touched by a need of action. And so, to some extent, I'm like, pause. I can't hold all of it. Right. And the call to action is to make sure my community is okay. That is my call to action. That is what I can hold. That is my capacity. And even if that makes me a little less of a good person socially, oh well. Right. That's what my capacity is.
Totally. Not only that, but like, because exactly what you're saying, like, because then that's, again, you're allowing the policing again. Then if you're trying to be what society says you're supposed to be, or what the purity politics or whatever the thing is that says that you have to be this. But I think that's where it does end up going. And I try to remind myself that, I try to speak to that even sometimes when appropriate, when contextually appropriate. Because I find myself with that too. Like, I see these things, and I see, even when it comes to reposts or speaking on something, and the say their name sort of thing, right? Like, and it's like, at a certain point, when is that performative? When is that just me signaling to other people? What is that really actually doing outside of signaling that I am a good person? Am I actually affecting any change? Although there is a point where I understand making things more visible is something, like more voices make something more visible, right? But at the same time, how much is just saying a thing doing anything, right? And you're right, it's about the local community, and that's what I've been trying to do more and more and more of, is like really even just like, it's hard because I don't like people generally.
I laugh because it's similar. It's actually, I like people very much. I actually believe truly deeply down inside the vast majority of humanity is good. That's my belief system. I don't know how true it is, but that is the belief that I carry. But I absolutely despise social interaction, and I really I despise virtue signaling so much. And so,
Oh, that's
like,
what it is.
yeah, the the interaction that occurs when you go into spaces of trying to help. Like I said, I've been part of the activism community in my area, and I know some of my closest friends are heavily activists. A lot of it can be very performative, though. A lot of it is very out of touch, and I tend to be, surprisingly, given where I live, I tend to be one of the only brown women there, usually. Wow. And it's frustrating because I know the people who organize it, they're close friends of mine, and I know they're not performative. They are there to accomplish a goal, and they're going to work with whoever will work with them to accomplish that goal. But it does attract these conversations, these gatherings, the protests. They do attract the type of people who do want a pat on the back for what they're doing. I'm a good white person, sort of, and like, you know what I mean? And I'm like,
I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah, one of the good ones. Pat me on the back, please. And
I'm
so
a non-practicing white.
I get it, because I do think that we take it too far in terms of like everyone should pay for the sins of all white people. That to me takes it too far, because and maybe it's because I'm in a relationship with a white man. I might be biased in that way. I don't want my daughter to carry the weight. Being a mixed child, I don't want her to carry that weight. It's not her.
Right.
Just because her phenotype is lighter skin, will she have to understand privilege? Of course. But she's going to have privilege of having two different cultures. I don't want her to carry that weight. So why should I project that onto any other young person? Instead, I think this goes back to what we were talking about, the ancestry of like diving deeper into that, diving to know yourself. To know yourself will mean that you will be able to hold the compassion for someone else. Yes. If you don't know yourself and instead you're working from a place of reaction constantly, then you get into the trouble. I think the debate or the drama we saw on TikTok was very much an embodiment of that, and the lack of knowing the self, and two people from very different perspectives who were neither were wrong until it got to this reactive, insulting, degrading form, and it happened very quickly. It just unraveled very quickly, and it became clear to me that it was like, these are two young people who have not yet found their inner knowing, their inner trust, and their boundaries, because if they had, neither of them would have said the things they said.
Right.
But
even that too, that whole thing is okay. That is you going, not you, that's them going through their journey, their, learning,
and it just happens to be very, very public. Which so I'm so glad that in my 20s I did not.
Right? I think tell me about it. Like, I was very much a Karen in my previous life, quote unquote. Oh my God. If cell phones were around as much, I would have been canceled 12 times over. Like, I am so grateful I was able to make mistakes in my life before a camera was in my face.
Right.
Oh
Right.
my God. I mean, and I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying anything, I'm not trying to justify any quote unquote bad behavior, right? But like, I, oh, sometimes when I come across these quote unquote Karen videos, I get so sad because I see like people, like even the people recording them, right? They're like laughing at them, and just like making fun of how, and all I see is somebody stuck in pain and fear and, trying to over control their environment to feel safe. I mean, that's a major projection because that's where I was. But like, that's all I see. I see this scared person who does not trust their inner authority at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes me sad. And
Right. It is frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating to be on the receiving end of anything where that happens because we've
right.
all been on the receiving end of that. But also, we tend to forget that we have also been a giver of that.
Mm,
I, you know, and because we don't maybe necessarily meet the phenotype or whatever, like there's times where I could see myself as the Karen, even though
mm,
I don't meet the phenotype. I don't, look like the traditional Karen. But
right.
like you said, you're in a point of like this high stress, trying to control something that is not in your control. You're not trusting yourself. You're not trusting your intuition. You're not trusting your boundaries. And when you do that, you go into fight or flight. And a lot of
Yep.
times sometimes some of us fight that.
Yeah.
And that's where
Right.
the confrontation comes from. And
Yeah.
the lack of trust, again, a lack of trust comes from, I think we're all holding on to, every one of us, especially here in America, this scarcity mindset that comes from the deserving, that comes from that we're fed constantly. We're fed through media. We're fed through even just living in cities where many people are suffering unhoused with no food. There's plenty of food. We have the ability to house, feed, and clothe these people, and
Right.
we don't. And that is very much intentional so that we are in compliance.
Right.
We stay in compliance. We are fearful that it could be us, and if we think that way, that's scary. So um, what's easier to hold on to? Deserving. I work hard for what I have, so I'm not going to
Right.
have.
Right.
Yeah, it goes back to that. It goes back to the fact that the elite control so much of our resources. We have a scarcity mindset. There's a lot of underlying fear in America that we just don't process on a
Mm-mm.
daily basis because it's a lot to hold.
I
The
mean,
capacity is too much.
it's too much. I love that. I wish I could. I think that might be the intro. It's too much. It is. It really, and it's like how. But how do you slow some when the entire world, it feels like when so many people are flailing like that. How do you model that? Because it's like if the world is on fire. I keep saying the world, right? But like if everything's on fire, and you're like, hey, listen, we don't have to keep things on fire. Look,
Mm-hmm.
and yet still there's some level of protection or it's not a switch.
Right.
You still have to walk through it.
Mm-hmm.
um it's tough.
It is, and I think, like you said, it's that being willing to let go of that judgment of others, of
Mhm.
being judged by others too. So if it's not in the capacity for a person to hold, don't hold it. And
Right. Right.
what if you're gonna quote unquote cancel me for saying that? Go ahead. I mean, you're not my audience anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't, I will not, and never will appeal to you. So if it's not in the capacity for a person to hold it, they can't hold it. And to demand someone hold something that's out of their capacity, all you're doing is alienating yourself and another person from connection. But do you? You do
Right.
you. What I
Right. Right.
do, what I'm going to do is hold my boundaries. What I'm going to do is hold what I can hold. And what I'm going to do is know that I am trying to change myself in a way that I don't hold the deserving in my head, so that I can move forward with a different perspective, and whatever that brings, moving forward. Because I was taught, very much that you followed the rules, you get the degree, you go to work, you do the thing, and that's why you're not on the street, because you work hard. That was
Right.
very much ingrained in, I think, every millennial, but
Right.
definitely me.
Yep.
And letting
All the
go.
while being called lazy
Uh-huh. Oh, yes. I mean,
and
oh,
entitled.
yes, for sure. And I just had to let that go, and I'm still learning to let that go. I'm still like, I'm my own boss, and I still have to be like, have you eaten today? Drink water. Why are you still sitting at your computer working? No, nobody's paying you by the hour.
Right.
It's a work through. It's a work through.
Yeah.
So I feel like bottom line is you hold what you hold, you give what you give in the capacity that you have. And that for some is a wider net, and for some of us it's a smaller net. And those they change and grow based on where you are in life, And that's how I hold moving through 2026, is I'm
Right.
like, my
Yeah.
net will change again, but for right now it's feeling kind of small, so that's okay.
And we take out the urgency too, right? Like it, because you're like, and then allow other people that same space. There
Mhm.
is such a, going back to the child correction thing again too, is that like it's like, okay, fine, yeah, maybe that behavior wasn't the best, but what's the urgency in correcting the behavior right now?
Right.
You know,
and
um,
more than likely a child given time and space will self-correct.
right, especially when you show, you don't hide the coddling to me is hiding the consequences,
Mm-hmm.
but enforcing strict discipline is, it feels like a fake consequence.
Right.
It's
It
anyway.
is. It is.
Yeah.
If you have to think of a consequence, like as parents or even teachers, and I think about this as a teacher a lot. I did, because as a new teacher, I remember having to come up with consequences all the time, and that was something they taught us to do. Ugh. Now that I think about it, ugh, what a pain in my ass that was, and it was like a whole thing, and it was so disingenuous, and the kids didn't really respond to it. And then when I kind of switched to a more community model, we're holding the space together, and instead offered incentives in the direction of like what is good modeled behavior here.
Yeah.
It became a lot easier. I mean, it became a hell of a lot easier, and the kids tend to self-correct. They really do. But when I had to like enforce boundaries and punishment and write-ups for the paperwork alone.
Yeah, forget it.
You can be straightforward, and I think people think that, because there's so much a misrepresentation of how to talk to kids online, and people are really selling, it's weird, but people sell like parenting classes and and there's this representation of what does gentle parenting look like, and I think people get really put off by it. It's the same thing with I think dogma again. This idea that one way is the only way, the right way, there's a right and a wrong.
Yeah.
But really, it comes down to, one, your personality. You have a personality. You're a person as a parent and as a teacher, and that personality is going to come through whether you want it to or not. And then you have other personalities, and it's a relationship. And, like you talked a lot about this earlier, is understanding that harm and the intentionality, and it's a relationship. I've talked about this before, that there's intention and impact, and they both matter.
Right.
And we can't
both matter.
you can't put weight on one over the other. They both matter. Because if you say it's all impact, then you're demonizing someone who maybe just was learning as much as the next person, right?
Right.
They're making that mistake. They're crossing a line and they're learning. So you can't just say it's all impact, and you can't just say it's all intention either, because what do we say? The road to
Hell is paved with good deeds or something like that. Yeah.
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 So it's a good relationship. I absolutely loved this.
This was amazing.
I loved it, and I thank you for having me, and I hope we can do this again. And
I think we will. I will put all your links below. Do your spiel if you want to do your spiel.
Yes. Okay. So Imperfect Witch is putting on an herbs and oils course July 18th. It is a 2-hour Zoom course. It is more focused, I promise. I can be focused. We are going to deep dive into the history of herbs, their magical properties, their healing properties. We are also going to look at the properties of the oil bases, the solvents, how do we extract compounds, and we are going to do 3 hands-on activities. So you will be making oils. It is a very fun class. I enjoyed making the curriculum. I hope to see you there.
Thanks for listening. I hope you meet me here again, between the mysterious eternal and the practical now. Until then, may the threads tug gently and your weaving be effortless.